It's Thursday, September 26th, and I'm your host, Paula Hersey. On today's show, we learn more about community visioning for climate resiliency with the Cape Cod Commission, get a science lesson from the OneCape keynote speaker, WBZ meteorologist Eric Fisher, and dig into another episode of Movers and Shuckers. Now for a look at municipal and legislative notes. This week is National Employ Older Workers Week, and to celebrate, the Mass Hire Cape and Islands Workforce Board recognized 3 local organizations for their outstanding efforts to employ and engage older workers. Older workers are a key segment of each of these organizations' staffing and critical to their success. Congratulations to Highline Cruises, the Town of Barnstable Recreation Department, and the Cape Cod Chronicle. Congratulations again, Barnstable Recreation. Barnstable Municipal Airport, located in Hyannis, Massachusetts, right here on Cape Cod, provides commercial and general aviation services to Boston, New York, and the islands of Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. It is owned by the Town of Barnstable and managed by the Barnstable Municipal Airport Commission and its staff. Channel 18, along with Cape Air and airport staff, produced this video to show residents and visitors just how easy it is to fly HYA. The Cape Cod Commission has announced a series of facilitated sub-regional community meetings scheduled for October 2019 to solicit input on planning priorities, concerns, and barriers to moving climate adaptation and mitigation actions forward throughout the region. Executive Director Christy Senatori joins us in studio to learn more. Climate Week is here in September, and with me today, Christy Senatori, Executive Director of the Cape Cod Commission. Christy, climate change and climate talk is really all around us right now as we here on Cape Cod think about how close we are to the ocean and some of the effects of a changing climate. You're going to bring together some people to really talk about this. So tell us a little bit about what the Commission is doing to understand climate, and then maybe we'll go into, who's going to participate in these meetings.
Sure. You're absolutely right. Climate is prevalent in every discussion that we're having, and especially as a regional planning agency, working on a lot of our regional plans, climate seems to come to the forefront of a lot of those discussions. So we are building on some of the work that we've been doing with our Coastal Resilience project, and now really looking at a community-wide process to look at climate. So we're initiating a community forum, and we'll be hosting several meetings across the region in the month of October.
Right. So when we talk about climate, and I just want to make sure that people understand that climate resiliency, adaptation, mitigation, these words, what do they mean to folks? Define adaptation versus mitigation, for example.
Sure. So we're really looking to have those conversations, exactly what you're talking about, where people can express their ideas and express their concerns around some of the barriers to implementing some adaptation and mitigation strategies. But really, we're looking for this to be a diverse and inclusive process. I would love to have everyone have a seat at the table. So we really want to have this be a broad outreach process where all voices can be heard. And we really want the climate discussion to be one that's mirrored in fact. And we can have a fact-based conversation that really looks at data-driven exercises and really is able to start with a baseline. So looking at that greenhouse gas emissions inventory and establishing that baseline so that whatever action is put forward to address climate in the future really is starting from what we know and then being able to address some of those fact-based conversations.
Right, and it fascinates me. I went to the OneCape Summit, and some of the cities and states out there are doing these inventories. Greenhouse gas emission inventory. What do you go out and you measure the gas in the air? How does that happen?
That's a great question. And there's a lot of work that's been done already with other communities establishing greenhouse gas emissions inventories. So we have spent a lot of time looking at the different methodologies, and we'll be looking at vetting some of the methodologies with a larger stakeholder group so that whatever methodology is chosen for the region is something that we're comfortable moving forward with, that is something that captures what we need to capture for our region, given that Cape Cod is different than some of the other areas, just given our unique geography and geology.
Right. And when you talk about greenhouse gas emissions, some people think, well, it's just the fossil fuels, but there's other factors that come into greenhouse gases. Is that correct? Like vehicles and things?
Right. And so we really want to capture everything. We want to make sure that captures the breadth of what needs to be captured, and really going in trying to make this a process that is as diverse and inclusive as possible so that we can capture all of those concerns that the larger region has.
Right. And when we talk about people, that diverse population to be involved in this process, students?
Students, absolutely. Municipal staff. We're really looking for the general public who wants to be engaged, those that are climate advocates and those that may be on the other side of that conversation. So we really want to have everyone have a voice and so that this is a collaborative exercise.
Right. And with the content that you gather from this, is there a series of steps after that you'll be looking to, take some of those ideas or some of those concerns into another forum?
So there's been a lot of work done across the region already to address climate and to look at climate. There's a lot of organizations that are already engaged and invested, and so we want them to be part of the process as well as the general public and anyone else who's interested. So these will be facilitated discussions that we'll have during these sub-regional meetings, and we'll define what a larger Cape Cod Climate Initiative looks like after those meetings. We'll have an opportunity to hear back from everybody and really get to define that for ourselves for the region. Cape Cod is unique, and so we'll have an opportunity to really shape what a larger climate initiative might look like once we have those meetings.
Right. And some of those climate initiatives, again, going back to some of the sessions that I attended at OneCape, some of these can be carbon neutral things. What are some of those initiatives that might come out of something like this? Not to hold you to any of them, but just to give people an idea of if they're going to attend these, what are some of the ideas that they might bring to the table?
Yeah. So it's really building on a lot of the work we did with our coastal resilience project and looking at different strategies to combat coastal erosion, sea level rise, and all of the things that are often associated with climate change. So it's building on a lot of that work, and then also defining what other strategies will be effective in the region. Our regional policy plan that was recently approved this year sets out a few strategies that we'll take a look at. Initially, it's that greenhouse gas emissions inventory, setting that baseline, but also doing an analysis of where are potential locations for EV charging stations and where can we look at different types of solar installations. So it's setting the baseline and doing some really data-driven intensive exercises first to establish where we are as a region.
Right, and it's fascinating to me. I have wanted to buy an electric car for years now and have been reluctant to because of the lack of EV stations, because it's only about 100 to 150 miles that you get on that battery, so you need that type of stuff. But we're seeing other businesses out there kind of taking, some of this in stride. Cape Air comes to mind. They've just put in charging stations and an initiative for their employees recently. So with these meetings, they'll be held at the end of October. Once you're kind of like through this piece of it, what can people expect? Will there be a report after this that you'll come out with?
Well, initially we'll have this inventory that we'll
Right.
work on over the course of the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay.
And we'll see what comes out of the climate initiative. It's likely a climate action plan of some sort may be developed as part of this, but there are a lot of partners within the region that are doing a lot of this work. So we want to make sure that it's a collaborative approach and that what we're doing is successful and can really provide some measures along the way, so that if we are looking at implementing certain strategies, that there's something that we can take a look at, whether those actions are being met and whether those strategies that we're implementing are successful.
That's great. What else should residents know, or businesses, or even municipal folks know about Climate Week and really getting involved with climate resiliency here on the Cape?
Well, I think climate and looking at the effects of climate have been something that have been incorporated in our daily work since 1990 when we were established. But it's not a singular lens in which we can look at anything. So I think it's important to keep in mind that some of these strategies really need to be looking at not only our environmental protections, but economic progress. And so there's a balance, and that's oftentimes what we strive, or almost always what we strive to achieve, is that balance between those two. So I think it's important that a lot of the stakeholders across the region, including students and the business community and others, really are engaged on this issue and can have a voice in the discussion. So we're excited to start the process and look forward to getting these meetings underway.
Fantastic. I hope to attend one.
Great. Thanks, Paula.
Thank you, Chrissy. The OneCape Summit provided an opportunity for a region-wide conversation on the unique intersections of Cape Cod's environment and economy. This year, the participants explored the natural, built, and community systems of Cape Cod and ongoing efforts to become a more resilient region. We learned more about weather and climate from WBZ Chief Meteorologist Eric Fisher.
Our Resilient Cape Cod project. We've updated this plan and talked to you about this over the course of the past several summits. And we'll be talking about that more today, because the focus around coastal resilience and climate change is at the forefront of every discussion we're having. So as we all know, the Cape is defined by water. We have 1/3 of the Massachusetts coastline. So 19% of our region is actually in the FEMA Special Flood Hazard Area, which basically means this is an area that's at risk of flooding from hazards. What this accounts for is nearly $29 billion of assessed value in property in the special flood hazard area. If we look at the coastline and the impacts from hazards in our vulnerable areas in terms of systems, you can see that we have about 15,000 of the residences in that special flood hazard area, accounting for about $13 billion of the total assessed value. We have over 400 miles of roadways, which would be significantly impacted were we to see a sea level rise in these areas. 14,000 acres of salt marsh and 9,600 acres of barrier beaches in these areas. We also have critical facilities that have been identified by our local communities, and 30% of these are located in these areas. And then finally, about 1,500 inventoried historic structures are in this special flood hazard area. So it's imperative that we take a look at these systems in combination as we look to address some of our vulnerabilities in coastal resilience.
Hundreds of local municipal leaders, planning professionals, and citizen stakeholders joined the Cape Cod Commission at the annual OneCape Summit at the Wequassett Resort in Harwich on Monday and Tuesday. The OneCape Summit provided an opportunity for the 15 towns on Cape Cod to share and learn from each other for regional solutions to climate resiliency and adaptation, wastewater, housing, economic development, and transportation. Workshops in the morning and afternoon panels provided participants opportunities to hear solutions and programs from other states and cities, public-private partnerships, and collaborative and technical planning tools from the Commonwealth. Starting off the day, keynote speaker Eric Fisher, chief meteorologist for CBS Boston's WBZ TV News, helped the audience understand the difference between weather and climate change. Channel 18 had a chance to speak with him after his presentation.
Meet someone face to face, talk to a group of people, answer questions, and try to explain a little bit more about how we measure things and how things are changing and what they might expect in the future. One of my favorite analogies between weather and climate is that climate is your personality and weather is your mood. Meaning, climate is kind of your baseline state. Are you a happy person? Are you introverted or extroverted? Are you someone who tends to be a little grumpy in the mornings every day, or someone who loves a good party? So that's your personality. But in any given situation, you get cut off with someone at an intersection, or you had a bad day, you're having an excellent time at a wedding and dancing. That's your mood. Your mood can change on a dime, and it can be a few different things. Those are your storms, your severe weather events. But your personality is kind of your personality. It's what you're going to revert to. So when we talk about climate, it's altering that baseline, what you kind of revert to. What are you operating in? What's your operating system, if you will? You can still have these jumps. You have the severe weather that you would expect, but it can be changed if you change that base state. Yeah, there are things that we look at, and some are more noticeable than others, or trends we're more confident in than others. The big ones, temperature, number one, getting warmer. We've added more than 4 degrees at Blue Hill Observatory over the last 100 plus years, and that's a significant number. That does start to change things for us. And when you talk about that much of a change, it means growing season is about a little more than 2 weeks longer than it used to be. Ice in and ice out dates have shrunk almost a month in some spots over the last 100 plus years. So you're losing some things that you had before. Another thing we're confident in, increasing heavy precipitation events, meaning when it rains, it really rains a lot in a short amount of time. Even when it snows a lot in a short amount of time. So some more irregularities in precipitation. And sea level rise is another one that has certainly become very obvious to us as water continues to come up, and of course a big impact for Cape Cod. So the Arctic is warming 2 times faster than everywhere else, your lower latitudes. And a lot of that warming takes place in the cold season as warm, moist air is transported up into the Arctic. There's less of that type of a weather pattern in the summer, and a lot of the sun's energy goes into strictly melting ice. So we're at a record low for Arctic sea ice. This may be the lowest extent ever recorded this year. And Alaska in particular has seen some exceptional heat records. We've seen the same in Scandinavia. And so you see some more accelerated change in those higher latitudes than places that are closer to the subtropics or the tropics. Do research. A lot of us, we fall into the trap of just like seeing something and saying this is true. Now, do some research into it and don't look for things that agree with what you already believe. Try to find some different points of view, do some critical thinking, and just try to look into the issue. Go to scientists. Don't go to, no offense to politicians, but go to the people who are doing the research and see what they have to say. Other people can frame it how they want, but scientists are on the ground and they're trying to figure out the best answers to the questions that we have. I'm Eric Fisher, WBZ TV, CBS Boston.
Our award-winning Movers and Shuckers series with the Cape Cod Community Center is back. This season, learn how commercial oyster farmers are growing oysters faster than ever, helping to clean our waters and produce more delicious oysters for you.
We call it the Hyannis Upweller Project, and the partners are our organization, Barnstable Clean Water Coalition, the Massachusetts Oyster Project, and the town of Barnstable. We're trying to grow oysters here from tiny little seed up to about 1 inch in length. So we're taking water directly out of Hyannis Harbor. It's being pumped up into the upweller, comes up through these sorting buckets that the oysters are put in. They're not only getting food and growing while they're in the tank, they're improving water quality. They're pulling out nutrients like nitrogen, and then they're also clearing up the water. They improve the water clarity by removing the sediment and the detritus. And then that clean water is going back down into the harbor. Once they grow to about 1 inch, we're taking the oysters out of the tank and we're putting them into town waters. And that's going to allow the oysters to grow until they're of harvestable size, which is 3 inches. And at that point, people in the town of Barnstable who have recreational shellfish licenses can come and harvest those oysters when they're mature and ready.
So in the wild, an oyster grows at about 1 inch per year, so it'd take them 3 years to get to a harvestable size. And when we start them in the upweller, it takes them only about like 1.5 years to 2 years maximum.
The amount of growth that we see on a weekly basis is just unbelievable. For example, our last group of seed that we received in July, when we received it, it weighed 9 kilograms, and in less than 30 days, it was 900 kilograms. So if you can imagine the biomass, we receive a package and then it essentially becomes the size of a vehicle within 30 days. So those are essentially my babies. I take a lot of pride in maintaining them and making sure that they are safe and sound.
So in the past 2 years, we've developed 2 pieces of equipment to efficiently clean and grade our oysters. So we have a 2-stage machine that both rinses sand and mud and weed off of oysters, and then it passes through a sizing chamber where the camera actually takes several pictures of an oyster and it sizes it according to our specifications. It just enables us to turn out a very consistent sized oyster that goes into some of the finest retail markets and restaurants all across the country. We shoot to harvest about 20,000 oysters per day, and they're packed daily and delivered in refrigerated trucks to Boston distribution centers.
Once it gets up to this distribution facility up in Boston, it's then sent via truck all the way as far as Denver, and then by air all the way as far as the West Coast. We're in probably 44 different states right now. We get pictures on our social media all the time from faraway places. Our big push this year has been to focus a little bit more on local.
I think what we want to keep improving it. We want to keep hopefully even doing some more oysters next year. What would be good is if we have to try and quantify, how many oysters are going in when they're 1 inch, how many are surviving over the winter, and then how many are reaching that harvestable age, and can try and look at that and try and factor how much nitrogen are all these oysters contributing to removing from the system.
Up next, things to do, places to go, and people to meet. Get ready for the second installment of the 2019 Love Live Local Fest season. You're invited to spend the day free, fun, and family friendly. This community event at Azleton Park from 11 to 5 is set for September 29th, this Sunday, and celebrates all that is great about our beloved Cape Cod. Local makers and the small businesses that support them, food purveyors, craft beverages, kids activities, music from local bands, Sarah Swain and the O-Boys at 12 p.m., Katie Flynn Band at 3 p.m., and beautiful views of beautiful Hyannis Harbor. Comments, suggestions, accolades, connect with us on Facebook, email us, or send us an old-fashioned note by carrier pigeon. Channel 18 works for you. I'm Paula Hersey, and thank you for watching Barnstable Today.